addicted to the thrill. It's a dangerous love. Victories within the mouth. Almost there, don't give up now. Only thing that's on my mind is who gonna run this town tonight. Who gonna run this town tonight?
Welcome, everybody, to the Hyundai SSFA 2015 Super Bowl kickoff show, aka the Super Bowl preview. I'm not joined today by Tom as he's deep in his bunker getting ready for the Super Bowl. It'll be Tom Cook and his New York Jets against Jacksonville Jay Villing and his Jacksonville Jaguars. Tom has been begging me to do a preview show, and I decided to indulge him a little bit and talk about this upcoming Super Bowl. This is a new age in Stratomatic football, and the ability to have these Google Hangouts and talk about the ratings and the previews, and doing a season preview or a Super Bowl preview or a playoff game preview. It's kind of cool. It's a neat way to talk about our hobby, to showcase it a little bit. And so I thought I'd do a couple things. Tom's provided me with a Excel spreadsheet of the end of the season stats. And I wanted to talk about one of the central players in the Super Bowl, which is Peyton Manning, and his story on how he wound up on the Jets. And finally, take a look at some sims that I ran to see who actually is going to win this Super Bowl. So first of all, let's dig briefly into the stats. I'm not huge on looking at numbers, and I know when I play my games, I'm not trying to shut down my opponent the entire time. If I have a big lead, I'm going to ease up on them. And then, yeah, that may have cost me one game out of 1,000. But I don't play to get the best stats, to get the best rushing defense or the best passing defense. Now, other coaches are different. Some guys do. But regardless, it's an interesting way to look at each team and judge its strengths and weaknesses. We'll also look at the matchups a little bit. So let's look at the regular season. Both teams, I'd say, finished very strongly to their season. The Jets struggled out of the gate a little bit, losing two games in the first two quarters. And then they seemed to find their stride, and they knocked off 5 or 6 wins in a row. Had a little bit of a hiccup in the third quarter. Tom did with the Jets, and then seemed to put it together aside from this game against Washington. But Tom put up some pretty historic numbers. We've talked about that before on previous shows. I don't want to dig too deep into that. But here are the season stats. Peyton Manning threw for nearly 5,000 yards, and that's incredible at any league, at any level, but especially in Stratomatic, which tends to make it difficult for you to throw the ball at time. The defense can put a stranglehold on offenses, and usually you see overinflated running stats, as you see here, Marshawn Lynch, 1,800 yards, a 5.8 yards per carry average. So the rushing averages are inflated a little bit, but the passing averages, the numbers are usually down. But Tom put an emphasis on the passing game. Despite having Marshawn Lynch, he threw the ball nearly twice as often. And Peyton had a great year. 33 touchdowns, only 11 picks. He had 2 receivers, Larry Fitzgerald and Kenny Stills, in the year with over 1,000 yards. I have trouble with my teams getting anybody to 1,000 yards. Usually, my highest receiver is half that. So Tom's a master at throwing the ball, and he's using spreadsheets to help him figure out which plays have the optimum chance for success. So we'll see how that plays out in the end. Now, Jay finished 10-6, just a game behind Tom, and he had the low turnover, highly efficient rookie Glennon, I should say. He didn't have nearly as successful a year. As you see, he threw for 24 touchdowns, but 21 picks. So despite his low turnover card, he seemed to be landing on the defense's card on the 9 short gain or the 7 long gain or long pass, or getting double teamed correctly. Anyway, he had some pretty bad luck on that. You expect him to have maybe 14, 15 interceptions, but 21 is a high number. But Adrian Peterson was the star of the Jacksonville Jaguars offensive attack, running for over 2,000 yards, 9 touchdowns. And Jay also is very good at throwing the ball. Maybe I need to look at my own self and see what I'm doing wrong. But Josh Gordon, playing off those two, the phrase that Tom seemed to like in a previous show, but oftentimes Jacksonville would put their opponents on the horns of a dilemma. Do I call run and try to shut down Adrian Peterson, or do I call pass and make sure that Josh Gordon doesn't burn me deep? That's the way Jay's offense works. It's the true 50-50 proposition of strat, which is really cool. Peterson ran for over 2,000 yards, 5.5 yards per carry average on nearly 400 carries. And Josh Gordon caught 79 passes, 1,350 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Antonio Gates is also another strong offensive weapon. Wes Welker chipped in as well. And these playoffs has seen a really some big offensive production from Peterson. Let's open the playoff file so I can look at that. It seems that every playoff game, Peterson has just broke off a long run. He did it against me twice. Once got called back due to a penalty. But let's look at each of these results. Let's not look at that one. The Green Bay Jacksonville game. Adrian Peterson had a 75-yard run, and he finished on the day with 187 yards rushing, 7.8 yards per carry average. Big day against the Packers. The game against the Seahawks, he also had a 52-yard run, finished with an 8.0 yards per carry average, 19 carries for 152 yards. Again, big numbers. I don't know why the box score isn't working for the Jacksonville St. Louis game, but I remember him, I believe, from the recap, also having another big day. We can probably look at the website and pull that down. Tom, on the other end, has been playing stellar defense, 2 games. He's allowed 16 total points. His offense has been sputtering a little bit, but that's more, I think, on the opponents calling a good defensive game and him getting some bad luck. But his defense has done such an excellent job, he hasn't really needed it. So let's look briefly at the computer managers of these teams. Just talk, because I know we've done this before in other shows, but let's start with Jacksonville. Mike Glennon, excellent pass blocking, all 7 except for Zane Beadles, and he's positioned at the right guard spot, so his challenge numbers will come up fewer times than the other guys. Adrian Peterson, without too much of a backup threat, Dixon, Fozzie Whitaker, those guys, maybe Denard Robinson, those guys hardly ever see the field. The receivers are Josh Gordon and Wes Welker. So Jay wants you to either call run and he goes to Gordon, or call pass and he lets Peterson run all day. Tough offense to stop. Their defense, Tom points out that there's no 6-rated players, and they play a 3-4 base. Ndamukong Suh is a 5-6 in that setup, so they have no 6s, but nearly every defender on the field is a 5. aside from the free safety and one of the inside linebackers. So those kind of defensive numbers, when they land on the D cards and they have the challenges, those guys will stop you more often than not. So despite the lack of sixes, this is a solid defense, a very good defense. And it's going to be tough at times for Tom to move the ball. But at least that's what I think. Tom doesn't seem to think so. He loves his options. He loves the fact that he's able to try to hit the 6 wide dive rule against those linebackers, the 5-rated linebackers. The options are wide open, he thinks, and they are in some ways. The pass rush is not overwhelming. So we'll see how that matchup winds up. Now, Tom's offense, he doesn't have very good run blocking. Maybe that's why he shies away from running Marshawn Lynch as much as I might. But he has pretty good pass blocking. He has a 4 at right tackle, 5 at all other spot except for left guard, where Andrew Levitre and his 7 pass blocking come in handy. We talked about Marshawn Lynch. Tom will also stick Danny Woodhead in there as a change of pace to make sure that he's more assured that the defense is going to call pass when they're faced with Lynch and Manning. That could also put your opponent on the horns of a dilemma. But when Woodhead's in there, you're going to say, oh, forget it. I don't care if he runs wrong against me. Well, that can be a mistake, because Woodhead's got some sneaky good numbers. Larry Fitzgerald, Kenny Still, Jordan Reed, all solid receiving targets. And the defense, Tom does have a dominant pass rusher on the line in Mario Williams. Tom plays a 4-3 with 2 5s in the middle. Defensive tackle Colin Jenkins and Paul Salai. The ends are Sean Phillips and the aforementioned Williams. And he has a 6 at left cornerback and a 6 at right cornerback. That means he's going to use his free safety to help the strong safety, double teaming the tight end, and be able to move that free safety around more freely, knowing that when his opponent does throw deep, they're going to be facing a 6 on those defender X readings. So, you'd rather have that. Look at the card. You'd rather have that defender X or long game when they're throwing at the cornerbacks, as opposed to the defender in zone reading, because if you leave that 4 home, he might get burned. So he's, Tom's thinking, okay, look at, you throw deep against one of my 6s, you got interception, defender X or long game, that's going to be incomplete. Another defender X or long game, that's going to be incomplete. Yeah, you might get a receiver reading. There's a few more of those, or get a hit on the edges. Long game here, long game there, but another defender X down here, that's going to be incomplete. So he's we're going to see Josh Gordon be targeted with 0 men in zone and Tom calling run, plugging it flatter, or bringing that free safety down to the short zone. What happens in that result, we'll find out. On the other side, Tom's going to go use Peyton Manning's excellent passing card to try to move the ball down the field, hit the flats, run. We can look at his team again, but Manning's card is just ridiculous. He has the completions on double teamed on 6 and 7. So he wants to use Manning's card to get Jay into calling pass, and then try to hit him with a couple of Lynch's long gains once he gets him consistently calling pass. Both of these are excellent coaches. I think this is going to be a really good Super Bowl. Here's that. Let's look at the stat file. Points for. The Jets were second in the league with 490 points scored, second only to the Rams. Jacksonville, on the other hand, is what is that? -3, so they're about 10. So that's pretty good offensive production. They only scored 391 points. Points against, the Jets defense was 4th in the league, allowing an average of 19.5 points. Jacksonville's right behind them, averaging they're 5th, averaging 21.8 yards or points per game. So 4th and 5th in defense. The teams were 2nd and 10th in offense. So definite advantage to the Jets. The Jets also put up a historic 178 positive point differential for the season, best in the league. Jacksonville wasn't bad either, plus 43, but that was 8th in the league. So advantage statistically to the Jets. Now, team offense. Again, the Jets had the number 1 ranked team offense when you look at yards, 429 yards per game. Jacksonville was the 8th best in the league at 367 yards per game. The run offense. Now, the Jaguars should finish ahead of the Jets here, and they do. They had 135 rushing yards per game. That's only 10th in the league, though. Surprising when you have Adrian Peterson. But then again, like we talked about, he's trying to get people to call run so he can have access to Josh Gordon's excellent receiving card. Guess wrong. The Jets, on the other hand, were 13th in the league, 128.6 rushing yards per game, and that's with having such a low number of carries. Look at that. Jacksonville had 40 more carries. A team like Seattle, my team, carried the ball nearly 180 times more. So Lynch is a dangerous card, but Tom doesn't use him as often as others might. Now, team pass offense. Tom is best in the league, shutting down the pass with those 6 cornerbacks, only giving up 301 yards per game through the air. Jacksonville is right behind him, 5th in the league, 238 yards per game passing, despite having Mike Glennon as a quarterback. I think I mentioned that. I thought this was, I said this is team passing offense. So Tom has the best passing offense in the league. Nothing to do with his 6 cornerbacks. This is Peyton Manning, and this is Mike Glennon. You can get Mike Glennon to be 5th in the league, you're doing something right. Team defense. Jacksonville is giving up the 3rd fewest yards in the league at 308, and the Jets are right behind them, 313 yards per game. Run defense. Jags tend to focus more on shutting down the pass. They're 11th in the league at stopping the run, and the same thing with the Jets, but to an even greater extreme. They're 14th in the league at stopping the rush, which means these guys are right at the top at stopping the pass. Yes, they're 2 and 3 in shutting down opponents' passing games. These guys double team like they have Barrow-esque double teams, being similar to Ed Barrow and shutting guys down, and they've had great success this season. So, who's going to win this game? Well, that's, you might look at the matchups, you might look at the stats, you say, well, it's going to be Tom in a blowout. And I kind of went into this, my little project of simming the games, thinking the same thing. But I was a little bit surprised at the results. So let me pull that up. First I ran one sim just to see what it would be like. And that result was way off because, neither team ran the ball very much. And I realized that's because Ed had these generic CMs loaded. So I decided, okay, I need to make them realistic in their CMs. So for the Jets, with Peyton Manning, I loaded the CM for the Denver Broncos, the 2013 Denver Broncos CM, and for the Jaguars, I loaded the 2013 Minnesota Vikings CM, offensive CM. And for both teams, I loaded Ed's max defensive CM because I figured that's going to be the closest to the way a human might call the game. So the results, which I thought would have been like 7-3 or 8-2 in favor of the Jets, were actually closer. It was 6-4. The Jets won the Super Bowl 6 times in my simulations. The Jaguars won the Super Bowl 10 times. The points, though, the Jags averaged about 16 points a game, whereas the Jets averaged around 22 points a game. So even though the results were close, the points seemed to favor the Jets. So let's just take a look at a couple of sample games here. The first one I ran with the correct CMs loaded. The Jets get a 17-10 win over the Jags. Peyton Manning had a good game. Adrian Peterson had a great game, running the ball 40 times for almost 200 yards. And Lynch ran for over 100 yards as well. The next game, Jacksonville pulls off the upset, winning 17-13. Again, you see Peyton Manning having a below average game in this sim, and Adrian Peterson and Marshawn Lynch both having below average games for them. So this is the kind of game that Jacksonville wants, kind of an ugly, dirty, low-scoring game. The next sim was the Jets 24, Jags 9. We saw in this one Lynch run for over 100. Peterson totally shut down in this one as the Jets' solid run defense just took him away. And Glennon, instead of taking advantage of all those run calls, throws 2 picks and finishes with a 35 quarterback rating. Terrible day for him. Next sim saw another Jets win. This one was put them up 3-1. Peyton Manning, excellent game, 25 of 37 for 262 yards, 105 quarterback rating. Glennon had 135 quarterback rating with 3 touchdowns, hitting his Josh Gordon, as you see, over a 72-yard bomb and another touchdown, averaging 50 yards a catch. So Gordon went off. Peterson was shut down, and Lynch had a huge game. Okay, another sim. Jags 23, Jets 20. Another ugly muckety-muck game, low scoring. Peyton Manning had a below average game, throwing 2 picks. Peterson had a big game, running for 150 yards, and Lynch was held under 100. So this is the formula that the Jags want to follow in order to get the win. Okay, let's go through these briefly again. Now this was the biggest victory for the Jaguars, 28-9. This one, Peyton threw 3 picks. Peterson ran for over 200 yards. So that's the formula. Pick off Peyton Manning. Adrian Peterson hit his big numbers, and just get solid output out of Glennon and hope he doesn't kill you. Okay, then it went the other way. The Jets 24, Jacksonville 10. Peterson still had a big game, 180 yards, but Lynch also ran for the same amount of yards, and Peyton minimized his turnovers, only threw 1 interception, 2 touchdowns, averaged 8.4 yards per attempt for a 94 quarterback rating. Glennon totally shut down, 7 of 25. Okay, the next sim, a close, high-scoring game. Jets 34, Jacksonville 23. Peyton did throw 2 picks here, but Glennon, the rookie Glennon, threw 3. Peterson with nearly 200 yards. Lynch over 200 yards. So that this is another formula. If you're getting a shootout, it's going to favor the Jets. You get in a low-scoring game, it's going to favor the Jags. Another sim, Jacksonville 18-3. Look at that. The Jags defense just went nuts, picking off Peyton twice, holding Lynch to just 100 yards. And as you see, Peyton Manning's yards per attempt, only 5.9 in this one. They sacked him 4 times, so he had a 42 rating. So the last one, the Jets 49, Jacksonville 9, as Peyton Manning has his best game of this Super Sim series. 20 of 32 for 282 yards, 4 touchdowns, 8.8 yards per attempt, 130 quarterback rating. Again, Peterson's having a big game no matter what. Every time these games, win or lose, Peterson's going to get his yards. But his long yardage here was only 17. You want to, so he let him hit the short gains, but you don't want him to go off for those corner edges. Lynch got 1 big run for 43 yards, but besides that, was held in check. And the Jets win this sim going away. So again, it was 6-4, Jets with the advantage. Will that have any bearing on the Super Bowl? Probably not, but those give you some ideas of which way the game could go. Now, the last thing I want to talk about before we sign off and I go actually eat my lunch instead of spending it talking about Stratomatic is the story of Peyton Manning. Now, you'll remember several years ago, Scott, here, let's go check it out. Scott was looking to trade Peyton Manning. So he was on the Green Bay Packers. So this is the 2012 season. So this is after Peyton's injury. He had come back and had a solid season, and he was being shopped. So I'm sorry, it wasn't the Packers. Scott is New Orleans in this league. So the trade wound up being the Jets get Peyton Manning and Steve Weatherford. New Orleans receives, they swap punters. Then New Orleans got Sean Laval, 4-4 guard. The Jets, number 2 pick, the Baltimore Ravens number 2 pick, the Jets number 4 pick. All those were from that season, the 2012 season. And the 2013 New York Jets first round pick and their 6th round pick in the following year. Now, how did that all come about? When Scott was shopping him, believe it or not, the Jaguars were also involved in the bidding. So I asked the 2 coaches if they could give me a rundown on how that all came about. So, Jay had been approached by Scott. He was offered Peyton Manning for Carson Palmer, his 2002 first-round pick, which was the 9th overall. That became Josh Gordon, and his 2013 second, which became Barcavius Mingo. So a second-round pick and a current first-round pick. And a lot of people told Jay, take it, do it. But Jay said, no, I'm going to stick with Hasselbeck because he'll do good as a flat passer. He didn't have very good pass blocking, so he was worried about Peyton Manning winding up on his back. And he had already traded his first-round pick in other deals in previous years, and he didn't want to do that anymore. So he knew that Palmer would have a pretty good card in the NFC West, and he expected the picks would be high, the interceptions for Palmer. But he says he did not regret making the trade. He went 15-1 that year with Hasselbeck, and he lost to Tom at the end of the year. And then he had some crazy luck in the Detroit playoff loss. And, Josh Gordon's career is yet to be written going forward. It's funny. He says it's ironic that Manning's card career may be longer than Josh Gordon's, which is crazy at the time. So we'll see what else. I also asked. We'll come back to that in a second. So this is Tom's history on the trade talks. So let's see. Okay, so where's that at? I have where is it? Okay, so Tom's offer. Let's see. I'm on the wrong email. That's why. So Tom had several back and forths with Scott before he actually made the trade. So let's see if I can find that. Okay, so he initially offered Scott a late number 2, a number 1 the next year, and Kareem Jackson. So they went back and forth with Kareem Jackson and Sean Laval, and finally they got down to the trade that we talked about. So while Scott's making these offers, he's trying to weigh: do I want to take Tom's package, which includes two second-round picks and a first next year, or do I want to try to up the offer to Jay and get a first-round pick, 9th overall this year, and then some other picks in addition? So this guy, Mr. Manning, which you saw in the intro, could have wound up playing for either one of these teams. So, and the Jets are obviously happy they made the deal. The Jags are happy that they did not make the deal. And Tom, I think we saw that before, he mentioned that he still remembers the Jaguars knocking him out of the playoffs a few years ago. And Jay, he says, he says, Tom is an amazing coach, a strat legend, and his team is better than mine. It's funny, I heard he mentioned on our post-game show from season 2 how he remembers that I beat him. What he didn't mention was that he totally throttled me in the regular season. I thought I had a pretty good team, a good Hasselbeck card, and a great AP card. Remember, he went 15-1. He just owned me that his one loss was to Tom. I had never seen so many correct double teams. My confidence was shook a bit. I had been pretty successful in my other strat ventures, but this guy knocked me down quite a few pegs. It was big for me to beat Tom that game with an injured AP. So in the playoffs, when they met again, that is the year that Tom had a really good team as well. AP got injured. He still fought through him and beat him. This is I think 2007 year or something like that. It showed Jay that he could compete with the NFL Eds and Tom Cooks of the league. I have certainly lost plenty to these strat gurus. Many times they have had lesser teams over the years, but Tom schooled me again early in the Small Beef season this year. but we're happy for the opportunity and we'll give it our best shot. John Wooden always said that you respect every opponent, but you don't fear anyone. And turnovers and penalties will play a huge role. So I like that. I like that he's talking about, he respects Tom, but he's not going to fear him. He's going to go out there and give it his best shot. And that's good advice for every strat coach. So that is pretty much it. So it should be an interesting matchup. Let me stop sharing my screen here. I will be calling the game, and Tom is, I'd say, a slight favorite, but Jade's a very dangerous team. It's going to come down to whether Jacksonville hits those big runs from Peterson, whether Peyton Manning is picked off or passing to touchdown glory, and we'll see what happens in the Super Bowl. But I hope you enjoyed this. Tom, I hope this met your specifications and your expectations, and good luck to both of you guys. It should be a fun game. All right, I'm signing off. I hope that you guys tune in for the Super Bowl on Wednesday afternoon, evening, and that's it. Good luck, and looking forward to a good game. See ya.